The Canopy Kingdom was never quiet. Between the screeching of the macaws and the rhythmic drumming of the woodpeckers, noise was considered the currency of power. To be heard was to exist. In the heart of this cacophony lived Kovo, an elephant whose massive frame was matched only by his overwhelming anxiety. Kovo believed that to lead the herd, he had to have an answer for everything. He spoke in thunderous bursts, constantly narrating his own importance to drown out the nagging fear that he wasn't enough. His unlikely companion was Pipa, a mongoose with silver-tipped fur and eyes like polished obsidian. Pip was Kovo's shadow, but unlike the elephant, Pip hadn't spoken a word in years. He communicated through the tilt of his head or a pointed paw. The kingdom called him the Mute, but Kovo called him his chief advisor, mostly because Pip was the only one patient enough to listen to Kovo's endless monologues. The crisis arrived not with a bang, but with a thirsty silence. The great river had shriveled into a cracked ribbon of mud. The Lion King of the territory had fallen ill, and the animals turned to Kovo. "Don't worry, I have the plan, the best plan," Kovo trumpeted, his voice shaking the dry leaves. "We shall march south. We will dig a hole the size of a mountain. I remember my grandfather saying water hides under the red rocks." Kovo barked orders for 3 days. He talked through the nights, outlining grand strategies and heroic marches. But as he spoke, the animals grew weaker. The more Kovo talked, the more frantic he became, his eyes darting around, looking for approval that wasn't there. Pip watched. He didn't dig, he didn't march, he simply sat by the edge of the dried riverbed, his ear pressed against the parched earth. "Pip, why aren't you helping?" Kovo roared, his throat raw from talking. "I'm trying to save us, and you're just sitting there in the dirt. Say something. Give me a sign." Pip didn't look up. He closed his eyes. He stayed perfectly, unnervingly still. Frustrated and exhausted, Kovo collapsed next to the mongoose. "I can't do it, Pip," he whispered, finally falling silent for the first time in weeks. "The more I shout, the further the water seems to go. I'm a failure." In the sudden, heavy silence that followed, the world changed. Without the sound of Kovo's voice or the frantic digging of the herd, a new sound emerged. It was a faint, rhythmic thrum, thrum. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't the birds. It was coming from deep within the ground. Pip opened his eyes and pointed toward a cluster of ancient, silent baobabs that no one ever visited because they were too far from the main path. Kovo leaned his giant ear toward the earth. He stopped breathing. He stopped thinking about what to say next. In the absolute stillness, he heard it. The heartbeat of an underground spring, muffled by the layers of stone, but singing to those who were quiet enough to hear. It's right under us," Kovo whispered, not with a roar, but with a realization. Kovo didn't give a speech this time. He simply gestured to the herd. Following Pip's lead, they began to move toward the baobabs. Using his tusks not to show off, but with careful precision, he pried back a shelf of limestone. Cool, crystalline water erupted from the earth, flooding the basin and bringing the kingdom back to life. As the animals cheered and splashed, Kovo sat on the bank with Pip. The elephant looked at his small friend, seeing him clearly for the first time. He realized that for years he had been using his voice as a shield, while Pip had been using his silence as a bridge. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Kovo asked softly. Pip didn't nod. He simply reached out and placed a small paw on Kovo's trunk, then looked up at the stars. Kovo realized the greatest truth of the Canopy Kingdom. Wisdom isn't found in the loudest roar, but in the space between breaths. Truth doesn't need to be shouted to be real, it only needs to be heard. From that day on, Kovo remained a leader, but a different kind. He became the elephant of the stillness. And whenever the kingdom grew too loud with worry, he and Pip would sit together by the water, proving that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all.